Donald Trump's now claiming that he wants the Epstein files released, but also the investigation that he ordered might stop that from happening. And I guess there's a small, technically non-zero chance that at one point he performed oral sex on Bill Clinton. But starting with Trump's apparent 180 on the files, you had him writing on social media last night that House Republicans should vote for a bill requiring the Justice Department to release all documents and communications related to Epstein because we have nothing to hide, and saying it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party, including our recent victory on the Democrat shutdown. Right, and you then had Trump referring to newly launched investigations into who he described as various Democrat operatives, and he added, nobody cared about Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive, and if the Democrats had anything, they would have released it before our landslide election victory. Let's start talking about the Republican Party's record-setting achievements and not fall into the Epstein trap, which is actually a curse on the Democrats, not us. Make America great again. And while Trump's dismissal of Epstein as a hoax, it's not anything new, his apparent support for the files being released, it's completely out of left field. Right, and don't forget it, Trump's been fighting tooth and nail to stop this release. Right, he's been calling anyone who wants this released traitors, idiots, and just last week he was still ramping up pressure on Republicans to vote against releasing the files. He even summoned Congresswoman Lauren Boebert to the White House Situation Room to talk about her demand to release the files. Right, and that coming as you had lawmakers releasing thousands of emails belonging to Epstein suggesting that Trump knew more about this convicted child sex offender's conduct than he let on, even if he didn't participate. With what's been called one of the most damning messages being one where you had Epstein seemingly referring to sexual abuse of underage girls, and he wrote, Trump knew of it and came to my house many times during that period. He never got a massage. And that is in another email he wrote about Trump. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Elaine to stop. And then, beyond questions about abuse, some of the emails raised questions about possible dirt that Epstein or others may have had on Trump. Right, in one, speaking about Trump, Epstein claimed that he had the ability to take him down. And in a 2018 email that Epstein received from his brother Mark, he was asked to question Steve Bannon about whether Russian President Vladimir Putin had the photos of Trump blowing Bubba, and adding, you and your boy Donnie can make a remake of the movie Get Hard. With many then noting that Bubba was a nickname for former US President Bill Clinton. With that said, you've since had Mark responding in a statement saying, the emails were simply part of a humorous private exchange between two brothers and were never meant for public release or to be interpreted as serious remarks, and adding, for the avoidance of doubt, the reference to Bubba in this correspondence is not in any way a reference to former President Bill Clinton. Though also on the note of Bill Clinton, he's now one of the most prominent Democratic figures being investigated by the administration. Right, and that goes back to Friday when you had Trump demanding that the DOJ investigate Epstein's involvement and relationship with not only Clinton, but ex-Treasury Secretary Larry Summers and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, as well as the banks JP Morgan Chase and many other people and institutions to determine what was going on with them and him. And then within just a few hours, you had Attorney General Pam Bondi announcing that she had given the case to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan. Writing attorney Jay Clayton is one of the most capable and trusted prosecutors in the country, and I've asked him to take the lead. As with all matters, the department will pursue this with urgency and integrity to deliver answers to the American people. And with that, I'll say that these newly released emails we've seen, they've really only confirmed the extent of Epstein's connections to the rich, powerful, and well-connected, even after he pled guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor in 2008. Larry Summers, for example, the emails suggest that he regularly turned to Epstein as a confidant, even asking for his advice pursuing a woman described as a mentee. And then also, separate from the emails, you had a recent New York Times investigation finding that JP Morgan spent years supporting and profiting from Epstein while ignoring the warning signs. And so ultimately, based on the emails and really everything else, you've got many saying that there are plenty of people and organizations that should probably be investigated. But also, it's not normal for one of those people to be the president, and then for that president to also direct the Justice Department to investigate only the ones that he perceives as his enemies. And so with all that, you kind of just have to throw out the idea that you have a DOJ that is independent, that they prosecute cases on facts and law rather than just going after people that the president points a finger at. And making things smell even more is that this DOJ, Trump's DOJ, just 4 months ago said that nothing in the Epstein files warranted further investigation. But also notably with that, even if new investigations do not result in more charges, they might allow the Justice Department to refuse to release any further files related to Epstein by claiming that they would negatively affect an ongoing case. And so that, it's exactly why you have Republican Representative Thomas Massie calling this investigation a last-ditch effort to actually prevent the release of the Epstein files. And on the note of Massie, not only, has he been one of the Republicans most vocal against Trump on this issue, helped spearhead this campaign with Ro Khanna, but very notably, you had him saying yesterday that 100 or more members of his party might join him in voting to release the Epstein files despite Trump's previous opposition. Right, Massie is saying that he hoped to secure a veto-proof majority. And, he and others trying to get more Republicans on board, that's been a big part of what we've been seeing, especially because even if the bill passes the House, which is expected to happen tomorrow, it would still have to get through the Senate. And there, they need to snag at least 60 votes, meaning that if all 47 Democrats voted in favor, they'd still need 13 Republicans to join them as well. And that's before even having to consider, would you have a veto-proof majority as well? Right, but with all that said, that's the news. This part's my opinion. I think it is very likely that before Donald Trump said, yes, vote for it, that there was a veto-proof majority ready to vote. Because Donald Trump on this issue has painted himself in the worst possible impossible corner. And it looks like he put himself in a position where really only one of two things could happen. One, he could stay publicly against the release of these files, and Republicans would then vote against him, and he'd look just so incredibly weak. Or he could publicly change his position and control whatever things he can control. But even there, I think he's kind of fucked himself. Because if they go the route of, well, we can't release these certain things because there's an ongoing investigation, for many, that'll just still look like he's trying to hide what's really in there. Or if what gets released is kind of a nothing burger, or it only goes after people that he perceives as enemies, or even largely just enemies and maybe a few Republicans here or there'll be a meaningful amount of the public that thinks they're not actually releasing everything. This is kind of a light release. But I mean, you already see murmuring online of people saying, you know, he's fought against this so hard. We had the shutdown. He was dragging his feet. Was that to buy time to really control what gets released? And the whole situation has just continued down this road where it feels like President Trump has made every decision to seem as guilty and as sketchy as possible. And, you know, one of the ways that he's come off the sketchiest and most guilty to a lot of his own MAGA supporters is the fact that he's gone after MAGA diehard Marjorie Taylor Greene so hard. Right? Marjorie Taylor Greene has been his loudest, most proud soldier. Yet last week, over her saying, hey, we should release the Epstein files, we should try to make things affordable for Americans, he labeled her a traitor. And while you had Greene saying that what Trump was doing was contributing to death threats against her, Trump just doubled down, again calling her a traitor in another post yesterday. You know, this back and forth between them and the potential real world consequences, it's become its own issue on its own. Because on Saturday, you had Greene writing, I am now being contacted by private security firms with warnings for my safety as a hotbed of threats against me are being fueled and egged on by the most powerful man in the world, the man I supported and helped get elected. Or with a noting that aggressive rhetoric has resulted in her getting death threats before, but she finds it even more disturbing now that the president is leading the charge, saying as a Republican who overwhelmingly votes for President Trump's bills and agenda, his aggression against me, which also fuels the venomous nature of his radical internet trolls, many of whom are paid, this is completely shocking to everyone. The political industrial complex and the toxic violent nature of American politics must end. Then yesterday, she shared that she and her family members had received hoax pizza deliveries, and there was a pipe bomb threat at the office of one of her construction companies. And again, saying that Trump's attacks were a dog whistle to dangerous radicals that could lead to serious attacks on me and my family. And there, she included details behind why people would target her with hoax pizza deliveries, right? Noting it's called pizza doxing, and it's done to harass, intimidate, and threaten public leaders, and is viewed as a potential precursor to more serious threats. And then with all that, she added, I am not a traitor. However, when the President of the United States irresponsibly calls a member of Congress of his own party traitor, he is signaling what must be done to a traitor, right? And that, it resulted in a lot of different reactions. Where you had people like Representative Jasmine Crockett using it to talk about other violence that she believes that Trump's fueled, saying, do y'all now believe me when I say that Trump fuels hate against those that oppose him? Will faux news finally start to address that this man has created a permission structure of hate and violence? And adding, next time you want to run a story about me legally paying for security, maybe run one on the insane amount of threats that I get that you are complicit in fueling. Also, you had a number of people slamming MTG for speaking out now that she's a victim of Trump's ire, right? Saying that she herself has spewed dangerous rhetoric that's fueled hate as well. Though there, she actually kind of addressed it when pressed about it on CNN.
Obviously, any threats to your safety are completely unacceptable. But we have seen these kinds of attacks or criticism from the president at other people. It's not new. And with respect, I haven't heard you speak out about it until it was directed at you.
Dana, I think that's fair criticism. And I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country. I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another.
And while some people, they were incredibly impressed by her apology there, you also have a number of people skeptical. And then you've also got people like Laura Loomer using all of this to continue attacks against MTG on Trump's behalf. Right? I mean, she's been posting about her nonstop lately, echoing all of Trump's claims that she's a traitor, saying she's going to hell, and arguing that her boyfriend should lose his White House press badge. And Loomer, she even claimed that MTG lied about some of the threats to her safety, saying that she contacted local police and, quote, they told me they never received a report today of a bomb threat at the business or residence of Marjorie Traitor Greene. Whereas you could look at this and see that the president does have people batting for him in this whole breakup, but you could also argue that this even proves MTG's points about Trump just inciting more attacks. So as far as Donald Trump's response, he basically told reporters that he doesn't believe that MTG is facing any real threats.
We'll see what happens.
Her life could be at danger because of the rhetoric.
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says.
Marjorie Traitor Greene. I don't think her life is in danger. I don't think frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
So with that, I'll say, Green, she's not the only politician dealing with threats potentially tied to Trump's rhetoric. Right, and I say that because there's an Indiana lawmaker who Trump recently criticized that got swatted over the weekend. Right, yesterday you had Trump upset at Republicans in Indiana for not forcing a redistricting push. And so he wrote on Truth Social, very disappointed in Indiana State Senate Republicans led by Rhino Senators Rod Bray and Greg Good for not wanting to redistrict their state. Because of these two politically correct type gentlemen and a few others, they could be depriving Republicans of a majority in the House, a very big deal. Senators Bray, Good, and the others to be released to the public later this afternoon should do their job and do it now. If not, let's get them out of office ASAP. And then later in the day, you had officers in Indiana saying that they got an email claiming that harm had been done to people inside the home of State Senator Greg Good. But then when they responded, everyone was fine and it was just a swatting hoax. And so you had Good then thanking the officers, but adding that this incident is, quote, unfortunate and reflective of the volatile nature of our current political environment. But then also the governor of Indiana writing that these threats have no place in Indiana and officials are working to bring the criminals behind the attack on Senator Good to justice. But then as far as Donald Trump's response this morning, he just continued to post things like, I will be strongly endorsing against any state senator or House member from the great state of Indiana that votes against the Republican Party and our nation by not allowing for redistricting for congressional seats. But for now, that's where we are. We'll have to wait to see how things continue forward. And in the meantime, I really would love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions here. We're both on the Trump-Epstein situation at large and how we're going to see that play out, as well as Trump lashing out at Marjorie Taylor Greene and the fighting that we're seeing in the party right now. And then we're diving into even more in just a minute, but first let me say, have you ever left a meeting and you instantly forget everything? Or except the part where someone else volunteered you for more work? Because yeah, same, and that's why I use today's sponsor, Plaud. Basically, my brain's external hard drive for every conversation that actually matters. Because yeah, my phone can record, sure, but it dies halfway, buzzes nonstop, and it turns every meeting into chaos. Now I have Plaud Note Pro and the Note Pen, both portable, powerful, and smarter than any voice memo app that you've ever used. Plaud Note Pro is thinner than a credit card, runs 50 hours, and auto switches between calls and in-person meetings, whether I'm on Zoom or I'm grabbing coffee. Or I use Note Pen, right? I wear it as a clip, a necklace, a wristband, and it lasts 20 hours while I'm moving around. And both use Plaud Intelligence. It transcribes in 112 languages, labels speakers, and builds summaries and to-dos so I don't have to replay calls. It's smart tech that saves time instead of wasting it. When I ask Plaud, it finds what I need in seconds, like even the ideas I didn't know I had. Plus, privacy's locked down with the US and EU's highest standards. Oh wow, basically my memory's less full and my brain's less fried. So hey, use that link in the description or scan the QR code and use the code in the description for 20% off. I mean, it's the biggest sale of the year. But then next up, we've got to talk about the news that broke today that a Trump-appointed attorney made so many mistakes prosecuting James Comey that the charges against him may be dismissed. Or with US Magistrate Judge William Fitzgerald saying in a ruling today, the record points to a disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps that led an FBI agent and a prosecutor to potentially undermine the integrity of the grand jury proceeding. With the judge going after the prosecutor's decision to review evidence that the FBI seized years earlier without securing a new warrant, as well as they're allowing an FBI agent to testify to the grand jury, even though this person may have been exposed to material shielded by attorney-client privilege. And that's in addition to the judge finding that acting U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan made statements to grand jurors harmful to Comey's legal rights. But also, it's hard to blame Halligan for handling this case so poorly because she had no prosecutorial experience just a couple of months ago. Right before all this, she literally worked in real estate law and represented Trump in civil litigation. Where she only got this job after her predecessor refused to do Trump's bidding and bring a case against Comey despite the lack of solid evidence. But then Halligan had no such problem and quickly brought the case before a grand jury in September. And you had Comey then pleading not guilty to the charges of making false statements and obstructing a congressional investigation. Right, and that specifically related to a testimony that he gave to the Senate Judiciary Committee back in 2020 about a previous leak to the press regarding an FBI investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Right, at the time of Comey's indictment, you had Attorney General Pam Bondi releasing a statement saying, Comey stated that he did not authorize someone at the FBI to be an anonymous source. According to the indictment, that statement was false, and then adding, no one is above the law. But now the judge has ordered that grand jury materials be turned over to Comey's defense lawyers. And that's big because grand jury materials are typically protected by strict secrecy rules. And while the judge acknowledged this, saying this is an extraordinary remedy, he also said, given the factually based challenges the defense has raised to the government's conduct and the prospect that government misconduct may have tainted the grand jury proceedings, disclosure of grand jury materials under these unique circumstances is necessary to fully protect the rights of the accused. And so, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens with Comey's case and what those grand jury proceedings reveal. But notably, even if the case gets thrown out, Comey's just one of 3 Trump critics that have been hit with criminal charges in just the past few months. And that, of course, as many others have been threatened. And so for now, let me know your reactions, but there's definitely more to come on this front. But then next up in the news, we've got to talk about how Donald Trump is trying to pull every rabbit out of every hat that he can find to try to get this affordability crisis under control. Because in the recent off-year elections where the Democrats crushed, the economy and the cost of living, they were at the top of voters' minds. So Trump, he's been testing different methods of winning back that ground, and Well, one of them, and where we'll start, is with his signature move, lying.
We have virtually no inflation.
Which, so the truth is, as of September, annual inflation was at 3%, and most economists actually expect that to go up even more as the tariffs reach consumers. I mean, you had the Yale Budget Lab last month estimating that consumers were facing an average effective tariff rate of 18%, the highest since 1934. And the data, it suggests that people are making the connection between the pain that they're feeling in their daily lives and the policies of the Trump administration. A recent NBC poll, it found that only 30% of voters believe that Trump has lived up to their expectations for tackling inflation and the cost of living. And that is only 27% of voters in another poll last month said that Trump's policies had improved the country's economic conditions. Right, and we're now seeing this report that as of June, past due balances to utility companies, that jumped nearly 10% over the same time a year before. And it's not just consumers and everyday people, like nearly 9 in 10 CEOs told a recent survey that the tariffs will significantly impact their business performance over the next 3 years, and adding that they'll increase the price of goods and services accordingly. But then also with this, Trump argues that even if you don't buy his no inflation lie, whatever price increases that you're suffering, those are going to be offset by a $2,000 tariff dividend check.
When you add the fact that I'll be giving back $2,000 or so to middle-income people, low-income people, everybody but the rich.
Right, and you also had Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent trying to sell this on Fox News yesterday.
$2,000 refunds to, and that would be for working families will have an income limit.
And so you had Trump saying this will happen sometime next year, and Bessent clarifying, I guess, that this will require the legislation from Congress, and he also added the caveat of, we'll see. Which I guess is also why you have many kind of skeptical that this is going to happen at all. You've got no shortage of people posting things like, the amount of grown adults that think they are getting a $2,000 tariff refund check is mind-blowing. And I can't wait to add my imaginary tariff check to my imaginary Doge check and buy all that imaginary $2 gas. And you've got all of that as bettors on prediction markets are also putting low odds on the prospect of Trump actually making these checks happen. But that also feels like that's like a hedge. Like if you bet that the checks don't happen and they don't, boom, you made some money. But if you make a bet that they won't and they do, then you just get less of that money. So also with that, I'll say this is not a recommendation. I think prediction markets, especially related to politics, is a rot. But back to the main thing, right? Even if these checks do go out, it raises the question, would they end up raising inflation and worsening the problem that they're meant to help solve? Or because Trump and Republicans, they've long claimed that the COVID-era stimulus checks were inflationary. And so when a reporter asked him to address this apparent contradiction, you had Trump answering.
The difference is this is money earned as opposed to money that was made up. You know, that money was made up. Everybody but the rich will get this. That's not made up, that's real money. That comes from other countries.
There are so many times where I hear him say something and I'm like, did I just have a stroke? But putting whatever that real money versus made up money argument aside, like, it is simply not true that tariff revenues come from other countries. Because for the millionth fucking time, tariffs are a tax on the American importers, not foreign exporters. But also, regardless of where it comes from, Trump says that he's also going to use the tariff revenue to pay down the national debt, which by the way is now over $38 trillion and rising extra fast thanks to Trump's big beautiful bill. But also the thing about that promise is it's all but impossible. Through the first 3 quarters of this year, the Treasury Department has collected nearly $200 billion from tariff duties, according to its September statement. So that likely wouldn't be anywhere close to enough to even cover the dividend checks, never mind the debt. Because according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, if the checks are structured like the COVID-era stimulus checks, they'd cost $600 billion. You know, if thing A is actually supposed to pay for thing B, you know, maybe Trump could afford to pay out $2,000 checks every 2 or 3 years, but that's also assuming that tariff revenue remains the same. And also you have to remember that we're having this conversation as lower courts have ruled that many of his tariffs are illegal and their future is now in the hands of the Supreme Court. And while we're waiting to hear from them, they did seem skeptical about Trump's legal arguments. But also, apparently Trump doesn't need the court's encouragement anyway because he's removing some of the tariffs on his own. Because you had Trump lifting duties on dozens of food products over the weekend, including beef, coffee, tea, cocoa, spices, peppers, nuts, bananas, oranges, mangoes, avocados, coconuts, guavas, limes, pineapples, tomatoes, and certain fertilizers. Or with beef and coffee being especially notable there because not only do Americans inhale an ungodly amount of both every year, but prices on both are up 15 to 20%. And so, you know, for US stores and consumers, lifting the tariffs could provide some relief, but also for Trump, you have critics arguing it's a tacit admission of guilt. Because for months, Donald Trump has claimed that tariffs will not raise prices for Americans, but now he's lowering tariffs to lower prices for Americans. So instead, you had him focusing on different arguments, like him explaining that tariffs are just not necessary for these particular goods.
They're not competitive in this country, like tomatoes and bananas and things. We don't make them in this country. So there's no protection of our industries or our food products.
You know, with that, one, I can't help but laugh with him talking about bananas because literally people have been yelling at his administration about this, not just with bananas, but with a number of things. But then also, too, you've got people saying, well, if that's true, then why the hell did you tariff them in the first place? But it's like he's finally come around to the basic point that critics have been trying to tell him for months, and he's acting like, hey, I'm a genius because I'm solving the problem that I created. And so anyway, you know, Trump's new argument is that, yeah, prices are a little up. Well, no, there's actually no inflation, but also there is, but really, there isn't. But also, if there was, prices will come down. But yeah, for now, we'll have to wait to see how things continue to play out, whether it be on the tariff front or the affordability front. And in the meantime, I think President Trump would like if you did not believe your eyes, your ears, or your bank account balance. But then as we wind down today's show, I want to end with congratulations and then talk about y'all's comments. Starting with a congratulations to Michael B., Seatgeek's latest weekly winner, who just snagged $500 in tickets and is going to go to F1 in Vegas. And for the rest of y'all, that's right, Seatgeek is still giving away $500 in tickets, and you should definitely enter today if you haven't already. I mean, you could be the next winner and snag $500 towards seeing your favorite artist, sporting event, or play. There's like over 70,000 events to choose from. Just add code DeFranco to your SeatGeek app profile for a chance at the weekly $500 prize. No purchase necessary. But with that said, it brings us to commentary, and a special one because we actually had a Friday Philip DeFranco show last week. If you missed it, definitely check it out. I'll have a link for it in the top of the description and top comment. But it was a special one because I let y'all take control. We covered a number of things I probably wouldn't dive into these days. And so with that, some of your comments and questions ended up being things like, wait, did I hear that right? Mrs. Philly D is running for office? And yeah, you heard right. Lindsay is running for a school board in Fulton County in Georgia. I couldn't be more excited for her because she's not, in my eyes, Mrs. Philly D. She is Lindsay DeFranco, capital L, capital D. She's actually an alum of the school system. She's so smart and passionate. I could gush about her for way too long. Main thing, if you're interested in learning more, you can go to lindsayforfulton.com. And for the rest of y'all out there, whether you're looking to support candidates or you just want to see change starts local. You know, there's never a better time to get involved than right now. Also, kind of related in the comments, a lot of y'all were sounding off on media literacy and just the news and kids. Stevie Guy sharing, when I was young, middle school age, I was writing essays on whether I believe capital punishment was something that I supported. So yeah, I think it's fine to talk to kids and allowing them to start developing their own opinions. Right, and like I said last Friday, and I always try to be very sensitive about stuff with kids. What I do for my kids isn't necessarily what I'd say, you know, you need to do for your kids, especially because so many of these kids are just different. I mean, even my own two, they are a testament to nature versus nurture. My oldest, when he was 8, he was very interested in the world and politics and all of that stuff. My current 8-year-old Carter, he's pumped about Spider-Man. And I'm like, hell yeah, brother, let's talk about Stan Lee facts. Yeah, I think for your kids, hear them out, see where they're at, and at the very least, just kind of be a sounding board for them. Because if you don't have the conversations, someone else or something else will. We also have people like Mag saying, as a teacher, we try to teach media literacy. Unfortunately, more and more often, parents expect us to teach their kids everything. It's hard enough teaching them how to read, write, do math, science, and social studies. Now we have to teach them how to be kind, respectful, patient, how to stay in control of their emotions and critical thinking. So with that, adding, if you as a parent think that something is important for your kids to learn, you need to check in with your kids. Make sure they know that it is important. Check in with them, see if they need help learning, show them that it is important. If we want to help our kids, we need to work together. And we also had Jess Birch saying, you know, media literacy, it might have actually been a blind spot for us. Saying media literacy is so important, and I think it's fallen by the wayside as we've gotten more into the age of technology. I think adults unfortunately assumed if kids grew up with technology in their life from the start, then media literacy would be inherently developed, but it obviously isn't. We're failing our children by not having media literacy as part of our curriculum since media and the internet is such a large part of their lives growing up. Right, and then finally, there were also just a lot of comments that noted the armpit hair hanging out is staring at me. And to that, I want to say, I'm sorry and or you're welcome. But that, my friends, is where today's video is going to end. But again, there's more just a click away. You've got my brand new podcast I did with Scott Galloway. My stepdad was so pumped that I did this interview, which was great for me because then we got to talk about something we could relate to and I didn't have to fake like I actually care about SEC football. Also, there's that Friday Philip DeFranco show, which if you didn't see, I highly recommend it. But no matter what you do, let me say this. Thank you for watching. I love yo faces. You're dope, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.